Moving on, we have the pen tool in Photoshop. So let's just start by creating a new blank document of any size. We're just going to draw around on it a little bit. And again, over in these tools, we have the pen tool, and you see that we have, it looks very much like Illustrator. With the curvature pen, we can add and delete anchor points or convert from a smooth to a corner point. So the pen tool, there's many reasons in Photoshop why you might want to create a path. You could do it to make a selection. You could actually put a stroke on this using a brush, which we kind of did in the last video. We could fill it. We could use it as a vector mask, and we can set type on it. So let's just look at the tool here, the pen tool, and just like Illustrator, when we see the asterisk, that means that we're ready to start. So if we click once and click again, we're going to get straight lines. So one thing that you'll notice is that if I click and drag up like we do in Illustrator, and then I move over, right now I'm not seeing that rubber banding where I see the preview, which is kind of scary because until I set that next point, I don't see the preview of it. This used to be the default behavior. There was no such thing as rubber banding, and it was always kind of scary because at this point I think, okay, I'm done, I can move on. But when I click over here, I'm still actively in the pen. So a couple of things that we can do, I'm just going to delete this. If that is the way your pen is behaving right now, come up to the option bar and click on this gear and turn on the rubber band feature. Now it's at least going to behave as we've seen in the past. We're going to get that preview and everything's going to be much better. All right. I'm not going to focus too much on this because you've all, I believe, every single one of you is in Illustrator. So again, this is going to work the same way. If we want to make a curve, we click and drag our directional handle first, and we move on from there. And if we want to change, if we don't want this next curve going this way, remember we hold Option, and we just come back here, break it off, set a new one. That's actually a straight line, sorry. If we want to, I'll go back here. If we want to set a new one, we can swing that up. I'm holding the Option key. Oops, I just also dumped my keyboard on my lap. Wow. All right, I'll go over here and go again. Hold Option key, and that allows us to swing this directional handle in a new direction, and then our next point will follow that. And then also remember that if you want to just break it off and go into a, whoops, I gotta get up here and break it. Option, click, that breaks it. Now we're in a straight line. If you aren't going to finish and close a path, the way you get it to stop is the Escape key is probably the easiest. And whenever you see the asterisk, you know that you're ready to draw again. All right, if you have any questions or need a refresher on that, like I said, I'm positive everybody's an Illustrator, so I'm not going to go into it too much. But in your book, there's a few pages on it, and you can work through that if this is new to you. All right, I'm going to back up to a blank document here, and we're going to actually put these paths to work in Photoshop. So first thing we're going to do is be in our pen tool, but let's make sure that we are, of these two options, we want to be on a path mode, not a shape. We're making a path to do something with it. So also over here in your layers panel, you always have a channels tab and a paths tab. And if we look in our paths tab, there's nothing here right now. However, let's go back to layers. Let's just all make some random shape here and close it. Doesn't matter what it looks like. Just go ahead and make yourself a shape. A path, sorry, I have to speak properly. This is a path. If we look at our layers panel, as of now, we don't really see anything, but if we go to our paths panel, we do see that we have a work path right now. If we were to make a second shape, notice that it's added. Do you see how both work paths are active right now here? To deselect it, all we have to do is click down here in the empty part of the paths panel, and that deselects this work path. Now when we go and make a new one, we're starting over from scratch. We're not adding to anything. So that after we deselect it and start again, it's a brand new one. So if you have just spent 5 minutes, with the pen tool outlining something to make a path, don't click away from that layer, because if you click again, it's going to disappear and start over. All right, with a path made, at the bottom of the paths panel, we see some icons. We see add a fill, add a stroke, and several other things. The first thing we're going to do is, let's just look at our foreground color. I'm going to make mine red, so it's, something kind of obvious. So I have a foreground color of red. And with my work path selected, I'm going to click on Add a Fill. So we have filled this path with red. Let's switch to our direct selection tool. So the black arrow is the path selection, the white is the direct, which allows us to pick anchor points. And let's move an anchor point. Now this behaves very differently from Illustrator. In this mode, if we were in shape mode drawing, it would have filled in like it does in Illustrator. But because we drew this in path mode, it only colored in our original path. There's no link between that original path and the fill. Let's see. Let's hold down on Option or Alt and click on that same Fill Path button again. And this time we have more options than just filling with the foreground color. We could fill with the background color, any color, a pattern, black, white, or gray. So you see that we definitely have some more options here. And now it's filling the current path, which is bigger. But again, if I were to move that path, it's not live. It's not a shape, it's a path. All right, so the disadvantage of filling a path as opposed to a shape is that, as you can see right here, it doesn't stay live, if you will. It doesn't fill when we move different points. The advantage of filling a path, or not a shape, or of using paths and not shapes, is that you have a lot more a lot more options of what to do. When you hold Option and click on that, like I said, it's more than just the foreground color. It's all these things, including patterns. So that makes it a viable option sometimes. Another thing that we can do, and I'm actually going to start over so I don't have any confusion on the screen here. I'll just start all the way over. More than I thought I was going to do. There we go. I'm just going to quickly, with the pen tool, make another shape, or a path rather. I just have to start wording this correctly. I'm making a path with the pen tool. I'm not making a shape. It is a path. Another thing that we can do, like I said earlier, is we can stroke this with brushes. So if we load our brush window, and I'm going to grab, I'm twirled open some of these, either special effect or wet or dry brushes, something that you can see has some character to it. This one, when I look at just the single blob of it, I can see it's kind of unique. So I'm going to pick the brush first, and then I'm also going to tweak the size because 306 pixels is ginormous. So I have that brush set at 30 pixels. And with the path still selected, I'm going to click on this Add Stroke button down here in our Paths panel. That's going to add that brush that we predetermined to that path. You do have to choose the brush first. Another thing you can do that's a few more options, just like we did before, is you can Option or Alt click on this stroke option, and you see that you have many things that you can work with. Lots of different options to stroke it with. I'm just going to hit cancel, and I'm going to zoom in so you can kind of see what this 30-point brush looks like as a stroke on this path. All right, the other thing that we can do, and I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to just take that stroke off of this. With the path selected, down at the bottom of our paths layer, the next icon over looks like the marching ants. And I'm not sure why I'm not getting a tooltip. There it is. Load the path as a selection. So you've used this tool to perhaps outline the elephant in that puppet warp from a long time ago. And now that we have the pen tool around it, what we really want is it as a selection. So then if we just click on this button, it now makes it a selection, the marching ants, and anything inside of those marching ants are the pixels that will be selected. So again, think back to the puppet warp photo that we used, the elephant, how they had already saved that selection for us. We didn't have to do it. They actually probably used the pen tool, turned it into marching ants like we just did, and then saved it as an alpha channel. All right. Conversely, if you select something with marching ants, so if you do a lasso or whatever, and you want to turn it into a path that you can then put a stroke on or a fill or whatever, when you have marching ants, you can click on this option in the paths panel, and that turns it back into, or turns it into a path. Like I said, you might have made the original selection with the lasso. Whoops. Okay. Let's just make a nice lasso here, Brenda. Okay, so lasso gives us marching ants, but if we click on this button, it turns it into a work path. And you can see how I lost that original one. So that's perfectly fine. All right. The other thing that we can do is we can use these to make layer masks and vector masks, and those are two different things. Very similar, but a little bit different. So let's close this blank, and actually I'm going to do that in the next video. So you can close that and we'll start on the next video.